Imagine waking up one day to find that everything you've known, your routines, your relationships, your career, and even your own sense of identity, feels foreign, as though they no longer belong to you. You look around, but the world seems suddenly strange, its contours unfamiliar. The comfortable rhythm of life you once relied on now feels like a dream you can't fully remember. You know it's there, but you can't touch it, can't make it real again. In this strange and unsettling moment, you feel a tightness in your chest, a subtle panic rising. What's happening? Is it just a phase, or is it something deeper? What do you do when the very ground you stand on seems to shift beneath your feet, when the reality you built for yourself begins to crumble without warning? We all fear the unknown, the unexpected, the unseen. These things provoke anxiety, doubt, and a gnawing sense of helplessness. But have you ever stopped to ask why? Why does the mere thought of the unknown fill you with such dread? Why do you cling so desperately to the familiar, even when it stifles your potential, even when it weighs you down with unspoken limitations? The irony lies in the fact that the unknown is, in essence, the very thing that can propel us forward, that can challenge us to grow, to evolve. But instead of embracing it, we retreat. We build walls around ourselves, seeking comfort in the predictable, the controlled. It's a paradox. We crave stability, yet that same stability holds us back from experiencing the fullness of life. What if the fear of the unknown is not just an irrational response, but a deeply ingrained part of our nature? What if the very thing to keep us locked in place, the fear, the anxiety, are actually rooted in something much more profound than we realize? Something that goes far beyond mere discomfort? How do we learn to navigate a world that is, by its nature, unpredictable? How can we embrace the unknown without it swallowing us whole? And more importantly, what would happen if we could learn to make peace with it? If we could use it as a tool for growth rather than a barrier to our happiness? These are the questions that demand answers, that cut straight to the heart of human existence. They pull us into an abyss of introspection, forcing us to examine not just the external world, but the very fabric of our psyche. It's time to dive deep, to confront the forces that bind us, and to discover how we can finally break free from the fear that holds us captive. Now, let's unravel this hidden problem. To understand the roots of our fear, we must first look beyond the surface. It's easy to say that we fear what we don't know, but this explanation barely scratches the surface of a much deeper and more complex issue. Our fear is not merely a reaction to uncertainty. It's an intrinsic part of who we are, a mechanism built into our psyche by both evolution and society. To break free from this fear, we must understand how it was formed and why it exerts such control over us. Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychiatrist, spoke extensively about the unconscious mind and the way in which it shapes our actions. According to Jung, our unconscious holds a vast reservoir of memories, experiences, and archetypes that influence our behavior, often without our awareness. He argued that we are constantly grappling with these hidden parts of ourselves, trying to integrate them into our conscious understanding of the world. The fear of the unknown, then, can be seen as a manifestation of this deeper, unconscious struggle. Jung's concept of the shadow, the hidden, repressed aspect of ourselves, reveals how our fear of the unknown is tied to our reluctance to confront those parts of us that are uncomfortable, inconvenient, or challenging. The unknown, in this sense, doesn't just represent external events or future outcomes, but also the part of ourselves that we've long neglected or refused to face. The fear is not just of the unfamiliar, but of what lies dormant within us, waiting to be acknowledged. If we turn to the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, we begin to see the connection between the fear of the unknown and our deepest existential anxieties. Nietzsche's famous concept of the Übermensch, the Overman or Superman, calls for individuals to transcend the limitations of traditional morality and societal expectations. He argued that only by embracing the unknown, the chaos of existence, could we truly achieve greatness. And yet, despite this call for transcendence, Nietzsche acknowledged the terror that comes with stepping into the unknown. It's not a comforting journey. It is, as he described, an existential abyss, a confrontation with a world that lacks inherent meaning. But why do we shrink away from this abyss? The fear of the unknown, according to Nietzsche, is rooted in the human desire for certainty and control. As social beings, we have been conditioned to seek safety, to find order in the chaos. This desire for control has deep psychological roots. We evolved in environments where unpredictability, whether in the form of predators, weather, or social conflict, meant danger, even death. The unknown was, and still is, a threat to our survival. Yet, in the modern world, the survival instinct no longer serves us in the same way. Our fears are no longer directly tied to the presence of physical danger, yet they persist. We fear the unknown not because it is dangerous, but because it symbolizes uncertainty, something we feel powerless to control. And this lack of control is psychologically unsettling. As Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, the absence of meaning and control is one of the greatest sources of human suffering. The unknown threatens that very sense of meaning, forcing us to question the structures and narratives we have built our lives upon. Jean-Paul Sartre, a philosopher of existentialism, echoes this sentiment, asserting that we are condemned to be free. This freedom comes with a heavy burden. The existential freedom we face in a world devoid of absolute meaning is terrifying. The unknown is a constant reminder of this freedom, an invitation to make choices, to shape our lives without any guaranteed outcome. But Sartre knew that with freedom comes anxiety, a sense of dread about the responsibility of creating our own meaning. The unknown in this context is not just a void but a vast field of potential that we must navigate with courage. Or else, like many, we will succumb to despair. The roots of our fear are thus deeply philosophical. The unknown challenges our sense of identity, our sense of security, and even our very understanding of what it means to be human. In a world increasingly dominated by technology, rapid change, and existential uncertainty, our fear of the unknown has only intensified. The ground beneath us feels less stable, and the future feels more unpredictable. We fear what we cannot control, what we cannot predict, and yet it is precisely this uncertainty that lies at the heart of human potential. But what are the psychological consequences of this fear? Why does it grip us so tightly? To answer this, we need to look at the way our brains are wired. Neuroscience reveals that uncertainty triggers a primal response in the brain. When we encounter the unknown, our amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing fear, is activated. This triggers a cascade of physiological responses designed to protect us from perceived threats. But in the modern world, these responses are often disproportionate to the actual danger. Our brains are reacting as though the unknown is a life or death situation, even when it is not. Cognitive biases also play a role. The ambiguity effect, a well-documented psychological phenomenon, explains that people tend to favor familiar, predictable options over unknown ones, even if the unknown could offer a better outcome. This bias reinforces our avoidance of the unfamiliar, keeping us trapped in comfort zones that limit growth. This confluence of evolutionary instincts, psychological conditioning, and philosophical existential struggles creates a powerful feedback loop. The more we fear the unknown, the more we cling to certainty. And the more we cling to certainty, the less we are able to explore the unknown and unlock the potential that lies within it. But even as we grapple with this fear, we begin to notice something. The unknown is never truly unknown. It's simply unexplored. And this distinction is where our opportunity for transformation lies. Now that we understand the psychological and philosophical roots of our fear of the unknown, it's time to explore how this fear manifests in our personal lives and broader society. We tend to believe that our fear of the unknown is merely a passive feeling, a temporary discomfort when faced with change or uncertainty. But in reality, this fear operates like an unseen force, subtly shaping the decisions we make, the lives we lead, and even the world around us. It shapes the very fabric of our reality, often in ways so insidious that we don't even realize we're being influenced by it. On a personal level, the consequences are both profound and subtle. Fear of the unknown can hold us back from pursuing our passions, taking risks, or even exploring new opportunities. How many times have you stopped yourself from trying something new, whether it's moving to a different city, switching careers, or starting a creative project, simply because you didn't know what would happen next? How many dreams have remained unfulfilled because you chose the path of least resistance, opting for safety over adventure? The psychological term for this phenomenon is status quo bias, which describes the tendency to favor the current state of affairs rather than making changes. It's a form of cognitive dissonance. We rationalize our choices to maintain the illusion of stability. The unknown, with its unpredictable outcomes, challenges that illusion, so we avoid it. But this avoidance comes with a price. By clinging to what we know, we limit ourselves in the growth that could emerge from embracing new experiences. This is where the unseen consequences become most apparent. The fear of the unknown doesn't just prevent us from taking risks. It creates a ripple effect. On a personal level, it stifles growth and potential. But on a larger societal scale, the consequences are even more staggering. Consider the way entire communities and cultures are shaped by this fear. In an era of rapid technological advancement and social change, the fear of the unknown manifests in society's resistance to progress, in its reluctance to embrace innovation, and in the deep cultural divisions that prevent collective growth. People fear the unknown because it challenges their worldview, disrupts their established norms, and forces them to question long-held beliefs. Take, for example, the rise of artificial intelligence and automation. While many industries are rapidly adopting these technologies, others are resisting the change out of fear of the unknown consequences. Workers in manufacturing industries fear losing their jobs to robots, and entire governments fear the social upheaval that could result from widespread unemployment. The fear of the unknown holds us back from embracing the future, from exploring new ways of living and working that could ultimately benefit society as a whole. This same fear shows up in political and social spheres as well. People are often reluctant to embrace social change, whether it's in the form of new policies, shifting cultural norms, or changes in identity politics. The fear of the unknown is frequently masked as conservatism or traditionalism, as people try to hold on to familiar systems and structures. But what is being ignored in this resistance is the potential for innovation, progress, and reconciliation. The unknown is not an enemy. It is a gateway to new possibilities. But by resisting it, we trap ourselves in a stagnant state of fear, unable to break free and move forward. Neurologically, our brains are wired to seek patterns and predict outcomes. This instinct has been essential for our survival, but in the context of modern life, it can become a limitation. Cognitive science reveals that when we face uncertainty, our brains are flooded with stress hormones, activating the fight or flight response. But in a world where the danger is not physical, this response doesn't lead constructive action. Instead, it leads to avoidance, paralysis, and indecision. This avoidance becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. The more we avoid the unknown, the more our fear grows. We become trapped in a web of inertia, unable to move forward. Our identities, which were once shaped by our willingness to explore and take risks, become confined to boundaries of what is known. The consequences of this are clear: personal stagnation, societal regression, and the loss of untapped potential. Even when we do venture into the unknown, we often do so with trepidation. Consider the way we approach change. We wait for the perfect time, for certainty to emerge, before making a decision. But this waiting game can be deadly. Change, by its nature, does not come with guarantees. The longer we wait for certainty, the more we deny ourselves the opportunity to experience life in its fullest form. This is one of the great tragedies of human existence. We spend our lives waiting for permission to live freely, instead of embracing the uncertainty that is a natural part of the human experience. And this doesn't just apply to individual lives. It extends to collective systems, such as education and healthcare. How many innovations in these areas have been stifled by the fear of unknown consequences? How many lives could have been saved? How much suffering could have been alleviated had we embraced the unknown rather than fearing it? This fear doesn't just limit potential. It actively harms us by preventing progress. In short, the unseen consequences of fearing the unknown are vast and insidious. On a personal level, it leads to missed opportunities, unfulfilled potential, and the crushing weight of unspoken regret. On a societal level, it holds us back from progress, innovation, and growth. This is the price of inaction, the cost of letting fear dictate the course of our lives. Now, with a deep understanding of the psychological and societal forces at play, it's time for a radical shift, a break from the shackles of fear and the false sense of security we've clung to. To break free from the fear of the unknown, we must learn to dismantle the very structure of our thinking that binds us. This isn't just a minor adjustment. It's a complete transformation of how we approach life, how we perceive uncertainty, and how we reconcile with the inherent chaos of existence. First, we must realize that fear is not something to be avoided. It is something to be embraced. The most profound breakthroughs in human history, both individually and collectively, have come from individuals and groups who dare to confront the unknown. They didn't wait for perfect circumstances or certainty before taking the leap. They took risks, they failed, and they learned. But in their willingness to face uncertainty head-on, they discovered new frontiers of possibility. The most famous example of this rebellion against fear is perhaps Christopher Columbus. At the time he embarked on his journey, the world believed that sailing west would result in a perilous fall off the edge of the earth. The unknown was a terrifying void, filled with monsters and certain death. But Columbus ignored these fears, stepped into the abyss, and discovered a new world, a world that had been there all along, waiting to be explored. His story is a reminder that the greatest discoveries, the most profound growth, come from navigating the unknown without allowing fear to dictate the terms. But Columbus was not the only one to break free. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard, known for his deep reflections on existential dread, argued that embracing uncertainty was essential for authentic living. He called it the leap of faith, a willingness to leap into the unknown without the assurance of safety or clarity. Kierkegaard believed that this leap was not merely an act of faith in a higher power, but also a profound act of self-liberation. By taking the leap into the unknown, we shed the layers of fear and doubt that prevent us from realizing our fullest potential. This leap, however, is not easy. It requires a radical shift in perspective, one that challenges everything we know about safety and control. To overcome the fear of the unknown, we must learn to shift our mindset. We must see uncertainty not as a threat, but as an opportunity, an open field where new possibilities arise. The fear of the unknown exists because we imagine that the worst-case scenario will unfold. But the truth is, the worst-case scenario rarely ever comes to pass. Instead, we find that in taking risks, we grow stronger, more resilient, and more capable of navigating future challenges. This shift in perspective requires an acceptance of vulnerability. We must let go of the illusion that we can control everything and surrender to the unpredictability of life. One way to do this is by practicing mindfulness, being fully present in each moment without judgment or fear of the future. Mindfulness allows us to embrace the uncertainty of the present moment and frees us from the constant need for control. But mindfulness is just one tool. Another is reframing our relationship with failure. Failure in our culture is often viewed as a sign of weakness, of inadequacy. We avoid the unknown because we fear failing, because failure feels like a definitive end. But what if we began to see failure as an essential part of growth? What if we understood that failure is not the opposite of success, but rather a necessary step toward it? Many of the world's most successful individuals have failed repeatedly before finding success. Thomas Edison famously failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. Each failure was not a signal of defeat, but a lesson learned, an opportunity to refine and improve. Embracing failure, then, becomes an essential part of the rebellion against fear. It allows us to reframe our fears and realize that uncertainty is not something to be feared, but something to be explored. The more we embrace uncertainty, the more we expand our boundaries. In doing so, we free ourselves from the tyranny of fear and open ourselves up to the infinite possibilities of life. History provides us with countless examples of individuals who have rebelled against conventional fear of the unknown and emerged victorious. Nelson Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years, feared the unknown future of his country, but he stepped into that uncertainty with the hope of transformation. His courage in facing the unknown helped dismantle apartheid in South Africa. Similarly, Steve Jobs, when launching Apple, entered uncharted technological waters, disrupting industries and creating products that reshaped the world. Neither of them knew the outcome in advance. Both had to navigate uncertainty, and yet their willingness to face it head-on allowed them to change the course of history. In each case, the individual's rebellion was not just against external forces, but also against their internal fears. They had to learn to trust in the process, in their own abilities, and in the unknown itself. They understood, on some profound level, that the unknown is not a threat to be feared, but a vast potential to be realized. For us, The journey is no different. The fear we face is not a personal flaw, but a universal challenge. But when we choose to rebel against it, when we choose to step into the unknown with courage and conviction, we open ourselves to the possibility of transformation, not just for ourselves, but for the world around us. Now that we've explored the roots of our fear, its consequences, and the means to break free from it, there lies one final, profound realization that has the power to change everything. It's a truth so simple, yet so powerful, that when understood, it shifts everything, the way we view ourselves, the world, and our place within it. It's the kind of truth that, once recognized, makes all previous struggles seem like small, insignificant obstacles. And it's this: the unknown is not something outside of us to fear, but something within us to embrace. The unknown is a space where our potential exists, not a void, not a threat, but the very raw material of our lives. This realization is both humbling and liberating. For all our fears and anxieties about the future, the unknown is not an enemy to be conquered. It is a foundation of who we are. When we look at uncertainty, we see a reflection of our own untapped potential. We fear the unknown because it forces us to confront ourselves, to engage with the aspects of our being that we have long ignored or oppressed. It holds a mirror up to our deepest insecurities, to the parts of us that are vulnerable, imperfect, and raw. But when we embrace this truth, everything changes. The unknown ceases to be a place of dread, but a canvas awaiting the stroke of our creation. Every step into uncertainty becomes an act of self-expression, a deliberate choice to carve out something new and meaningful in our lives. The fear dissolves, not because the unknown becomes familiar, but because we become willing to engage with it, to dance with it, to shape it rather than hide from it. This is where the philosophy of existentialism reveals its most liberating insight. As Sartre argued, we are condemned to be free. In this freedom lies both the burden and the gift of creating meaning. We do not need certainty to live meaningful lives. We need courage. The courage to step into the unknown, not as something to survive, but as something to experience fully. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke, in his Letters to a Young Poet, encapsulated this perfectly when he said, "You must live life, not as if it were a problem to be solved, but as a mystery to be lived." This is the heart of the matter, the truth that unlocks everything. The unknown is not a problem to be feared. It is a mystery to be embraced. It is where life happens, where we are truly alive. If we try to control it, to contain it, we deny ourselves the full richness of existence. The unknown holds the possibility of transformation, of growth, of reinvention. It's where the most profound changes in human history have occurred. Every revolution, every breakthrough, every personal epiphany has arisen from the willingness to step into the unknown, to take that leap of faith and trust that something meaningful will emerge from the chaos. To fully understand this, consider the butterfly. The caterpillar, wrapped in its cocoon, faces the unknown with no idea what awaits on the other side. It cannot control the transformation. It cannot predict the outcome. And yet, it embraces the unknown, undergoing a radical metamorphosis that reveals a new form of life, one that could never have existed without confronting the uncertainty of the cocoon. We're no different. The unknown is our cocoon, the space where we undergo our own metamorphosis. It is a place of change, where the potential within us takes shape, often in ways we could never have anticipated. We are constantly in the process of becoming, and that process is only possible if we learn to embrace the mystery of the unknown. At this moment, you might feel an urge to resist, to hold on to the comfortable, familiar parts of your life. It's natural. The fear of the unknown is deeply ingrained. But recognize this. The unknown is not out to harm you. It is calling you forward, inviting you to shed the layers of fear and self-doubt that have kept you stagnant. In stepping into it, you not only discover the world in its raw, unfiltered beauty, but also come to know yourself more fully. You realize that the most profound discoveries are not out there, waiting to be found, but within you, waiting to be unlocked. This is the ultimate truth. The unknown is not a void. It is a space of endless possibility. It is the space where you find your true self, where you confront your deepest fears and transcend them, where you are free to shape your life into something authentic and unique. So, let go of the need for control. Stop waiting for certainty to guide your path. Instead, Walk forward into the mystery, knowing that with every step, you are creating something new, something real. The unknown is no longer a threat. It is a gift, and it is yours to explore. The final, most powerful realization is this. You are not defined by the fear you feel, but by the courage you summon to step beyond it. The unknown is not an obstacle. It is a canvas upon which you paint the story of your life. In the end, the most profound act of liberation is not in conquering fear, but in accepting it as a companion on the journey. Fear will always be there, but it does not control you. You are the creator of your reality, the navigator of your destiny. The unknown is not something to escape. It is something to embrace, and in embracing it, you will discover that the only true certainty in life is the capacity to transform.